I recently did a Twitter poll and to see what are the biggest challenges that freelancers have. And I want to talk about that. So let's first just take a look at the results, right? So this was kind of the first question of what is the biggest challenge, and finding clients was a pretty clear lead, right? About 60% of the people said finding clients. So I asked a follow-up question to that, and which is still going. Not as many responses here, but the majority of them said that they don't know where to start. And it was kind of like backed up by a few conversations that I had with some other bubble freelancers. But I'm interested to know from that community that responded that way, where are you in your freelancing cycle? Are you just getting started? Are are you a few years in and you can't keep the deal flow going enough to support maybe the people that you've hired? Like, which part of the problem, which part of finding clients is the most difficult? So I'm going to continue to ask those questions and poll people and see what they, say that their problem is. But I want to talk about speak specifically to those people that are just starting out in finding their first clients. If you're thinking about being a freelancer anywhere, whether it's bubble, I'm obviously a bubble freelancer, design freelancer, any kind of, remote worker, I guess, or where you're not employed by somebody, you're going to have that point where you're like, all right, how do I find my first client? I was certainly there. And I think people are nervous about that because it feels like you have to go out and like sell yourself, which in a sense you kind of do, but it doesn't need to feel like hard sales, right? My first client was a friend of mine. And I think, and a few people that are just getting into it that I've spoken to, also other freelancers, they say the same thing. One of their friends who had an app idea was one of the first people that they started working with. Don't expect to make money on your first freelancing gig. You're probably going to undercharge yourself. I think the important thing to keep in mind in your first freelance gig is don't overpromise. What you commit to, don't overcommit. What you commit to in that first engagement is very important. To have, like, if it's someone who someone who knows, that they know that you're not going to try and screw them over or screw them out of money or whatever. There's a bit of trust there. Explore this kind of thing together and see what's possible. And this will be my rate, right? You're kind of opening that up. And then when you get more comfortable with what you're actually delivering, what you're promising people, what even your niche is, even though you're a bubble, like say, for example, like I do app development work, but I want to focus in one specific area. The app development is very broad, right? You can work on API connections, you can work on front end stuff, you can be strictly back end, integrations, whatever. You're not exactly sure what area you want to focus in just yet. So let that first project or first few projects be a little bit experimental until you find that niche. You have a couple of projects under your belt, you're going to see that it's a little bit easier. You're going to have a little bit more confidence and be able to sell yourself a little bit better, whether that be on social media. That's where the majority of my leads come from, just people that I know on Twitter and LinkedIn have reached out to me and say, look, I have an app idea that I think you can help me out with. Okay, let's have a talk around it, right? It doesn't feel like a sales call. It's not a sales call. It's just like, I'm going to understand your problem, right? Like that's how I go into these calls. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to understand what problem you're trying to solve. If you have an app already built, I'm going to listen and try to learn what it is that you're building, because it's going to take me a while to understand that, regardless of how good of a programmer or developer, whatever you are. And we'll see if we're a good fit for each other. Try and join the Twitch stream. I want to have a conversation around finding users and challenges around in freelancing work. Twitch.tv/bubblehack. I'm streaming every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time.